All right, hello and welcome to today's webinar, How Nordea Uses Data to Comply with Financial Regulations. I'm Paige, your moderator from Trifacta. So today we're going to hear from two speakers with Nordea Bank, one of the largest banks in Europe with over 10 million customers in the Nordic region. First, we have Alistair Anderson, who has over 20 years of big data experience and leads a 400-plus team as the head of data engineering at Nordea. He has been focused on building the next generation of data platforms at Nordea in order for it to become a market leader in regulatory compliance. Additionally, we have Paul Lin, who has deep expertise in the banking world and is helping execute Nordea's vision as a product engineering team lead. We're excited to hear from them both today. Our technology sponsors today are Cloudera and Arcadia Data, in addition to Trifacta. With us today, we have Steve and Shant. Steve is the financial services lead at Cloudera, and Shant is the co-founder and CTO of Arcadia Data, and of course, myself. So we're just going to start with a high-level overview of what these technologies do before Alistair and Paul jump in with how they're being used at Nordea. Steve, I'll let you explain a little bit about Cloudera.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paige. So Steve Topman, financial services lead for Cloudera. I apologize for the British-American accent. UK-based originally and then moved to the US. So at Cloudera, we believe that data can make what is impossible today possible tomorrow. And to that end, the Cloudera EDH, the Enterprise Data Hub, powered by Hadoop, is a big data platform that enables machine learning and advanced analytics that can then be deployed wherever your data resides, either on-premise or in the cloud. So the world's leading organizations are using our fast, easy, and secure platform to transform vast amounts of complex data into clear and actionable insights. And that drives faster business decisions at a lower cost.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So a little bit about Trifacta. We're the industry-leading data wrangling solution. We make exploring and preparing data a self-service process for any user by leveraging the latest innovations in data visualization, human-computer interaction, and machine learning. We support desktop, cloud, and big data deployments. Shant, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Shant Hovsepian, CTO and co-founder of Arcadia Data. We do native visual analytics for big data. This in turn helps companies find insights within their data. Our software runs within modern data platforms such as Cloudera's Enterprise Data Hub as well as the cloud. It's used for the scale, flexibility, performance, and security users need to glean meaningful and real-time business insights in this modern era of big data. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so here's our agenda for today. So we'll start with Steve Topman, who will walk us through some of the factors and resulting use cases that are shaping data in the financial services industry. Then we'll hand it over to Alistair, who will help us understand a little more about regulatory reporting at Nordea. Then we'll have Paul give us a demo of how his team is leveraging Trifacta and Arcadia Data on top of the Cloudera platform. And finally, Alistair will wrap up with some of the benefits Nordea is already seeing, and then we'll head into Q&A. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Steve.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So the next slide, please. So at this point, Cloudera has over 200 FinServ customers. It's our largest vertical. It's our fastest growing, including Nordea, who we're very grateful to have as a customer. And there's a couple of key themes across all of them that has kind of driven this big data adoption. So the first is that data is a natural consequence of life today. Everything from cars to even people via smartphones and watches are producing vast amounts of data. So that's really driving this massive growth that has to be handled in some way. The second is that, especially in financial services, there's this huge focus on the customer journey. As this digital adoption sort of sweeps across the industry, and it's especially important in financial services because the margins are so thin, and it's increasingly easy for customers to switch, and so customer experience is a key differentiator. Actually, one of our other customers, not too far from the Nordea team, talks about sort of taking banking back to the 70s. They don't mean sort of in terms of the technology, they mean in terms of the customer experience. If you went into a bank in the 70s, they knew your name, they knew what you wanted a mortgage, they knew your family, and they had a very personalized experience, and they're using data to do that today. The third is the sort of fraud and cyber. I mean, I don't need to remind everyone just how common fraud and cyber attacks are today, and the bad guys are increasingly sophisticated, and they have a larger and larger impact. It's just a cost of doing business. And then finally, regulations. And actually, the next slide speaks to this even better. So next slide, please. So there's an old saying that it's impossible in life to be sure of anything but death and taxes. In financial services, we tend to add to that. The only thing you can be sure of is death, taxes, and more regulations changing more frequently. So if you look globally, there's this slide is just a very small subset of all the regulations that are facing financial services institutions. And then you've got deltas between sort of European regulations, US, Asia Pacific. So, in the US, Dodd-Frank and CCAR is very dominant. In Europe, obviously, the Basel initiatives, et cetera, MiFID, and those newer regulations coming through. So across the board, these regulations are getting more intense. They're changing more frequently. And the larger you get as an organization, the more markets you go into, the more of these regulations you're subject to. So it's incredibly complicated, and the thing is not just the amount of regulations, it's also the rate of change that you have to comply with as well. Next slide, please. So what we're seeing is those core themes are driving specific use cases inside, especially around Cloudera, these usage of the enterprise data hub. So those 200+ FinServ customers are doing things like focusing on customer journey. They're focusing on financial crime, so AML, cybersecurity. Cyber we group into this as well, but there's a whole separate area around that. Cloudera has specifically been working with Intel and a few others on a project called Apache Spot, which is worth looking into if you're looking at cybersecurity. On the product and services efficiency side, there's a huge focus on how you, better serve products, better understand which products are working well for you. And then the subject of today's kind of webinar is risk and compliance. So there are all these use cases around risk and compliance, but what's really interesting is I'm seeing customers that they see risk and compliance and financial crime as cost centers, things they have to do. But what's really interesting is the same data set you use as a cost center for risk and compliance can actually be used for customer journey. And I've actually literally seen customers take billion-dollar cost centers and turn them into small profit centers. So there's a massive opportunity there. And next slide, please. So across these data sets, we see a real blend. So firstly, many of these financial institutions have done an okay job with structured data, and I'm going to let the guys from Nordea comment on their path to that piece. But what we're also seeing is an increased focus on not just structured data now, but then blending in unstructured data. And really the value comes from not just having a really good view of your structured data, being able to analyze all of it and get all the value from it, but also blend it with the unstructured data, and then to be able to apply machine learning, analytics on top, which is why the webinar today should be so relevant. So really across all your organization, you may be doing an okay job with structured data. Most companies are not, but it's actually the value of being able to bring both together. So structured and unstructured into a single platform. And that's why Hadoop is so special. It allows you to blend both structures together and unstructured. It allows you to store it at a completely different cost point. It has a schema on read framework, schema on need, which allows you to be much more flexible. And with that, I'm going to pass over to the Nordea team. So, Alistair. Next slide, please.
Thanks very much, Steve. And well, good afternoon to everyone in Europe, and good morning to the folks in the US. So just before we step into this, I think the Nordea brand maybe hasn't reached the shores of every country. So Nordea is the largest services organization in the Nordic region. So the Nordics is also known as the Scandinavian countries, so Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. We are a global systemically important bank, so we're one of the 27, 28, I forget the number, of GSIB banks who are monitored very, very closely by the regulators. Systemically important became far more of an issue after 2008. The the banks in this category came under much greater regulatory oversight, and that continues to be one of the key challenges, but also our responsibilities to our customers and to the companies where we're domiciled. So this is really what we're going to talk about today, is the environment in which we are regulated and how we are adapting to the challenges that brings. The next slide, please. Okay, so the challenge is really quite simple, although it's fairly tough. We are seeing an increase in both the level of regulatory oversight, the level of regulatory change, the requirements that are made of us. Within the Nordic region, we have 4 regulators, including the ECB, who we are under obligation to report all of our financial standings and risk standings to. This is not uncommon in the GSIB banks. GSIB banks almost always, I can't really think of maybe some of the big American and Chinese banks, but almost always are active over multiple jurisdictions and therefore have multiple regulators. So we're seeing a large increase in the regulatory demand, the amount of data that we have to produce, the accuracy of that information as well. So there's a general explosion in growth, not really due to more data, but more questions being asked of that information. So really our challenge from a regulatory standpoint is how can we answer these questions quickly, accurately enough. At the same time, I would probably put us in the same category as most of the financial services organisations, and that's not just includes banks, includes insurance organisations, so on and so forth. As Steve has mentioned earlier, the margins are being challenged. The profitability of the bank and therefore the cost base is often a source of focus. So can we increase the operational cost as well as the investment cost of producing these data solutions, data platforms, regulatory reports, at the same time as there's this explosion in demand. And, like all mature companies, and Nordea is over 100 years old with the amalgamation of many financial services organisations, we are carrying with us a level of technical debt through legacy systems, and, we don't have just one platform that does one job. We have to bring data together from many, many platforms. In our case, that's a number that reaches over 1,000. So next slide, please. So we started this effort probably about 18 months ago. And the ambition that we had was really to, as Steve mentioned earlier on, turn a cost centre into something where maybe not profit center, but certainly somewhere where we could see it as data as a strategic asset. So we set ourselves 4 sort of strategic pillars that we wanted to build a next generation platform to. So the first one is cost, so the cheaper box that you see. We wanted to do a complete flip in the cost of storage and processing of data. Almost all of our processing was on proprietary technologies, not open source technologies, and we were using proprietary hardware, not commodity hardware. We wanted to flip that equation and reduce a significant percentage. I know there's market indicators out there of you can get somewhere between 95 and 99% cost efficiencies. That isn't really achievable in the highly regulated enterprise environment that we have, but we really targeted something north of 70%. We also wanted to increase the velocity of our change. So we wanted to deliver, for lack of a better word, in an agile fashion. We wanted to rapidly reduce our time to market, move to a higher velocity of insight as well, cater with real-time data sources. We've always had real-time data sources in the banking world, whether it be trading systems or customer contact systems, but we wanted to have real-time insights coming out of those systems. Our enterprise legacy systems are orientated around the batch, and we wanted to move to processing. We also wanted to automate a lot of the development process and operational process that today is done by humans. So we wanted to reduce our overall people footprint in the work that we did, knowing full well that we had to do more with less. Therefore, we had to automate stuff that's done by humans today. But we wanted not to just replace like for like. I think if we, changed technical platform and landed over, many years of investment and effort in a platform that did the same as our current legacy platform, then we really would have failed. We wanted to do something that was much better. We wanted to build a platform that guaranteed the quality of the information it produced and worked on gave us a capability to continually improve the data quality and make sure that the accuracy was higher, and therefore that reconciliations became something that was inbuilt into the data quality framework. We wanted to have full traceability of the information. Steve mentioned the Basel regulations, so BCBS 239, the ability to trace your full provenance of information, so data lineage requirements, is something that we really wanted to do from cradle to grave. We talk about a sort of track and trace feature throughout our platforms. And then the last part is a very hot topic for us. We need to do far more with the data that we have, and the explosion in analytical potential within our data sets, whether it be for the downside risk in terms of managing our exposures or managing our financial position or potential financial crime issues. We also wanted to leverage that analytical capability for the good of the balance sheet and the customer. So the digital experience, the customer journey, we wanted to build capabilities on our data sets that leveraged those generic capabilities both to protect the bank and also to do a better job for our customers. The last one is something that we see must be inbuilt into any data platform, is that unless we can guarantee the security of the information, that the right people have access to the right data to do their job, but they don't have too much access, and also we have an enhanced audit capability, then we will be far more in a far more comfortable position with the platform that we're building. There is an inherent risk in building big data platforms that you're putting all your eggs into one basket and creating, I think the sort of cyber term would be a honeypot. So we want to make sure that the platform was fully secured, that we had an ability to raise the security levels for very highly restricted data sets. So financial investigations would be a highly restricted data set, for example, and that we wanted to build not just a sort of rules engine that monitored the platform, that we were starting to move to a predictive monitoring capability where we were looking for behavioral patterns of access on the platform. And again, Steve mentioned Apache Spot, and that's a really interesting project that does this sort of stuff out of the box. But privacy by design was a big part of our success criteria. So that's really what our ambition was. And thanks for the sponsors here and allowing us to stand up and talk. Paul's going to give a demonstration of the capability that we have brought to market within Nordea.
Hi everyone, I'd just like to introduce myself. So my name's Paul. I run the product engineering team here at Nordea, and I'll be using one aspect of the SEPA regulation to demo how Nordea are utilising Trifacta and Arcadia today. Could you go to the next slide, please, Paige? Thank you. So Trifacta and Arcadia, they're integral tools for our team, and we also use them for delivering other regulations, including Basel or net stable funding ratio. And in fact, we're using Trifacta and Arcadia in every project our team's running right now. But I'll give you a brief introduction to the SEPA reg. So it's a European regulation that requires payment information to be sent in a specified XML format, ISO 20022. And Nordea's goal is to be the first Nordic bank that offers a full XML flow both in and outbound. The data to populate these SEPA payment instructions is held in our payment and accounting infrastructure. And as Alistair mentioned, Nordea has grown by mergers and acquisitions over the years, and our IT infrastructure very much reflects this. Most banks would have a single payment system. In Nordea, we have 7 payment systems in Denmark alone. And in all, 17 different systems supply SEEP information, each with a separate support team, each with a different system type, mixed output formats, mixed output times. So I want to give you an idea of the complexity of the legacy environment. Our end goal for delivering this requirement is, well, firstly, meet the regulation, of course, support client retention and attract clients as well. And we can create a consistent data set which could be used for approved purposes in the future. On the right-hand side of the slide for key results, when we talked to an experienced Nordea PM, they estimated this work optimistically at taking 15 business days. And this estimate was very much based on a traditional data gathering process, like talking with 17 different dev teams, getting on 17 systems book of work, and getting 17 data extracts. And in this traditional model, most likely the data analysis wouldn't be based on a full data set, and we'd have to be making assumptions about the data. And this would create a very strong risk that there would be incorrect assumptions not identified until late in the project cycle, which would cause issues to the project. However, as I'll go on to demonstrate now, we were able to turn around this requirement in under 1 day using Trifacta. Paige, could I get control of the screen, please?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm now going to demo Trifacta, and we've really realized big productivity gains. We've got the ability to discover and wrangle data at scale using this platform, and it's really delivered a solution to our prior problem of wrangling data at scale. So I'm now showing the Trifacta screen, and I'll walk through an overview of the screen first before doing anything. So as you can see, data is very clearly presented, and we're getting some metrics straight out of the box. So to take a column at random, we've got a horizontal green bar, which is giving a metric of valid values. And if I scroll to the right, we can actually see 2 examples where some columns have mismatch values and valid values, as well as missing values. Additionally, we're getting like a breakdown of the distribution of values within each column. So this column, we're seeing the percentage of P, W, E values. So it provides lots of good information. If there's interest, you can even drill down and get more detail on a column. Some statistics, the graphical distribution of the information as well. So the data set we're using for this webinar, it's got around 110,000 rows, and we're taking a sample, just over 31,000 rows for this analysis. And the system we took it from, it contains cross-currency transactions. And I'm now going to do 4 of the transformations we did in the actual project itself. And in doing this, the business SME was sitting beside me, and we were able to work very interactively, very iteratively to get to the right result. So the first transformation is on the column kontonummer. It's Danish for account number. And first thing the SME saw, and you probably see now, is why is there a 0.5? That's simply incorrect. So we have to remove that value from the column. So by highlighting the number, firstly, I'm getting what the action would be, but I'd like to direct your attention to the bottom of the screen, to the suggestions box. So there's a number of different suggestions we can extract, which we are doing now. We could replace, count, occurrence, a lot of different options. And even within the same box, we can extract on different criteria. So say, for example, I just wanted to extract on the same account number. But in this instance, we just want to remove the 0.5 incorrect value. So I add that to the recipe, and then that's committed. And then just for housekeeping, I'll drop the original column. Additionally, it's in Danish and we had to rename, so I'll rename the column. And once again, this is exceptionally straightforward. And I just add that to the recipe. And each time I'm clicking Add to the recipe, it's adding a line to the Wrangle script that's held here. So each action is an individual row, very easy to follow. And no technical knowledge is needed to do this. The next transformation was actually on currency code. So we needed to show the 3-character ISO currency code, for example, USD. But right now, these are represented as numerical values. We created a lookup table and then applied that. And after the transformations ran, you can very much see that there's a lot more value in the data already. So old column is just telling me 1, 2, 4, 9. Here, I'm actually seeing recognizable business value. I understand that DKK, EUR, Swedish crowns, etc. And once again, I'll drop the original column and rename the new column. So in instances where we have a wide volume of data with small significant differences, as is shown, what's really stopping us from having a consistent data set is the way data is structured, and we're resolving that right now. And additionally, we're looking at quite a substantial slice of the full data set, and we're really reducing that risk that I raised earlier about making incorrect assumptions about the data. The final transformation I'd like to show is converting a value to string. So the column here is actually an indicator of a debit or credit, a positive or negative value. So I'd like to replace. So once again, I look at the suggestion box for replace, and I can see what the preview would be. In this instance, there isn't an out-of-the-box transformation that works, so I'll do a modify. And it's simply as straightforward as, well, this is how we want to represent a debit. Add that to the recipe. And I'll do the same transformation for the credit. Once again, selecting the replace and adding the value that is needed. And then finally, I'll change the name of this column. So I hope I've given an idea of the real acceleration in speed that Trifactors offers us. Instead of having to get usually an Excel-based extract from a system that is typically out of date as soon as it's extracted, having to go over that Excel extract. Obviously in Excel you can find out where there's blank values, but in a data set of 110,000 rows, sometimes that can be quite laborious. Trifactor really speeds up our analysis. So we've finally done the wrangling that I wanted to demonstrate, and we've now got our completed wrangle script. And we use this for 2 purposes today. First, it's the golden source of all the transformations we did. So in future months, when we want to find out why we did what we did or what transformation was made, we refer to this centralized resource. And second, we provide this information to our dev team who are creating a Scala ingest framework to inform them exactly what needs to be done on the ingest. So the final step is to generate results. And this applies the wrangle script to the data set as a whole. So right now, we're doing it on, say, 1/3 of the data set. When we run this process, it'll apply the transformations to the entire data set and make it ready for use by Arcadia. But just to round off my intro to Trifactor, the advantages my team has seen, it really gives us the ability to have better data analysis at scale, clear visibility of data to the business SMEs. The business SMEs are really keen, and compared to the previous environment, they're actually quite excited about the clarity that Trifactors offers them. And it's also a very easily repeatable wrangle process. So as Alistair referred, we've got in the hundreds of systems that need to be addressed. And doing this allows us to create patterns, so we're very efficient in the ingest. It's also allowed IT to step away from owning the data wrangling process, and we can now deliver data transformation by content. I'd now like to move on to Arcadia. So in the real world, I've generated the results, ran the transformation, and got a new transformed data set. And now this data set is sitting on our Cloudera cluster, ready for use by any of our other applications. So firstly, an introduction to Arcadia. We use Arcadia for business intelligence and data visualization at scale. It very much avoids and resolves a legacy issue we had where data sets used for data visualization were being held locally on individual machines because we simply didn't have a tool that would allow us to do what Arcadia does. So we could create a dashboard or a visualization that's very much appropriate to the business area that needs to see the data. So we could present the graphic on currency transactions to an FX trading team to get them visibility of client activity per currency, or an ops team that want to have an idea of potential transaction breaks. So on this dashboard, we've got 3 tabs that I'll go through: Overview, Transactions, and Data Quality. But firstly, I'll walk through Overview. So on the system this data set's taken from, the number of debit and credit transactions should roughly equal each business day. There will be a minor delta, but not a major delta. And we can see that in this particular system, there looks to be a major delta. So we can actually see the detailed data. So using Arcadia as a first to generate that lead, there's a clue there's something wrong. And now we're actually looking at the transformed data set that we worked on. So we can see the currency codes that were transformed. We can see the debit or credit indicator. But now I'm looking at the actual data set, ready to quickly investigate any potential issues. Then we could look at the systems upstream that actually feed our data set. So we've got 5 systems that do that. And we've also got 5 different client types. So for example, we could click on a client type. Once again, we could drill into a specific field. Let's say we want to find out what currency transactions client type E is doing. Let's do that. And we see that naturally Danish kroner denominated transactions are by far the most popular, but we're also seeing activity in euros, pounds, and Swedish crowns. And this makes the data set much more accessible. It really allows us to derive value from our latent data. We're exposing it in the appropriate way to different audiences, and they're really getting positive feedback. We can also present the data in a tabular way. So firstly, the transactions by currency. And I think you can see immediately there's a potential data quality issue. All currency transactions should have an ISO code attached, so it's something we should be investigating. Or equally, we could be using this for sales purposes. So these are the top 25 accounts. These are the customers we should be taking out to dinner more because they're doing lots of business with us. Equally, we could reverse that and see our bottom 25 accounts. Why aren't these customers doing business with us? What can we do to improve our level of service? So moving on to the transactions. And Arcadia, it's dynamically pulling the data from the underlying tables, and that's why you may see a very minuscule delay when we're populating tables. So now we're seeing transaction volume by currency. Once again, something that now very easy to interpret, and it gives us clues. Like, why are we seeing such a trough here or a peak here? Was there a macroeconomic event that was triggering this, for example? Or once again, is there anything we can do to improve or enhance in our level of service? We could also identify another DQ issue, like what's this outlier doing here? Once again, that links back to the previously identified issue of the transactions without an ISO code. We can additionally slice the data at a more refined level by looking at different product types. These product types have been masked for the demo. There are different products that we're looking at in our firm. So that allows very much a drill down to the underlying information. Chord diagrams are another good way of exposing the information. So we can slice by currency, the system name, and the client type, seeing connections and getting clues as to links between our different pools of data that may not have been visible just by looking at the spreadsheet. Arcadia is exceptionally configurable, so we can slice and dice very much on the fly. So right now, these core diagrams are primarily sorted by currency. It's a matter of a few clicks to sort by system or client type as well. The final tab that I'd like to show is data quality. So in this, we're comparing the raw data set pre-trifacta transformation with the transformed data set, the one that we've just done. And I'll just unsort the data. So we'll look at one. So we've got debit, credit, the transform field, and I'll move down. Here we are, Frebel key one. So we can do just a quick transformation and analysis. So we've got 55,212 credits been transformed. And there's actually a discrepancy of 20 here. Once again, giving us a clue that it's something worthwhile investigating. So the self-service aspect of both Arcadia and Trifacta means we get productive quickly. We aren't restricted by waiting for that sort of big bang bunch delivery anymore. We can, once we've got a data set, we immediately start to work on it. It really means we're not blocked by any sort of traditional business analysis processes, and we can really get on with the quick delivery of business value. Thank you. I'll just hand back control to you now, Paige.
Thanks, Paul.
So if I remember the presentation, I think it's me next. So, you know, as wonderful a colleague Paul is, and as brilliant a demo that was, there is a horrible truth here that this stuff is as sort of dull as dishwater. we just can't dress this up at all. But there is a hard commercial reality here that we spend an awful lot of money on these kind of tasks. So, you know, what has been the business impact and the business payback of rolling out not only Trifacta and Arcadia, but other technologies as well built on the Cloudera platform. So we've been able to Paige, there's no slides showing if you're able to put them up. We've been able to realize some hard numbers on the back of the ambitions and the targets that we set. And I can't remember them off the top of my head. Paige, if you could put the slide up.
Yeah, Paul could just pass the presentation back to me.
So I've stopped sharing, Paige.
Right, click and give a presenter.
Apologies, I've done that now.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, so as I said, you know, we were measuring this by the numbers in terms of cost and number of people. As Paige mentioned at the intro, you know, we have circa 400 people in IT who are actively engaged, and the sort of tasks that I see one question in the Q&A is, what is wrangling? Well, wrangling is really ETL. Okay, so taking raw data and refining it using transformations, in this case for business quality and also for business homogeneity and standard definitions. What are the rules that we have to apply on data in order to do that? And we have in IT 400 people that do that on the legacy platform alone. We have 180 just working in change. So that combined with the business colleagues that are engaged in this means that we have a huge rationalization opportunity and saving effort in this space. So the comparative results we've seen when we look at our from and to, so you know, this is a traditional ETL data warehouse type platform to a data lake power platform using the tooling that we've demonstrated, is that in a data quality environment we've been able to shift from really managing the structure, which is what ETL folks and data model folks are sort of obsessed with, to managing the content, which is all the business users really care about. Is our the actual content of our information consistent, high quality, trusted? So that's been a big change for us. The fact that in the time to market space we've been able to reduce both the change of time from weeks to days and from months to weeks, and at the same time we've been able to use the scale out architectures available within Cloudera to take, you know, day load processing into, you know, a couple of hours. It's just been a significant impact for us. The liquidity processing we point to there is really taking all the assets on the bank's balance sheet and examining them against all the liabilities. This is a Basel III standard, and we were able to take that to 120 minutes. That's using quite a small cluster and using the Spark technology, down from 2 days on a traditional engineered proprietary technology. We've also been able to realise the sort of the agile goals that we set ourselves. So moving from large monolithic releases to a microservices architecture, a single code can deploy components, even deploy them in a canary pattern and roll things in and out without it being a massive retch for us. But the biggest kicker at the bottom is the OpEx piece that I spoke to earlier on. We've managed to put together an architecture, and I should be quite open here that we're not replacing all relational technology, far from it. We just want to reuse that relational premium technology where it makes sense, you know, i.e. data maps, rather than using it as something like an ETL engine or a massive data lake. So with that combined hybrid architecture using both relational and big data technologies, we're still able to realize a 73% decrease in our OpEx. And that's something that we'll be looking to realize over the next 2 years as we move away from you know, one way of doing things into more of a best of breed architecture. With that, I know we're a little bit time constrained, so I'll just pause on that point, and I think we move to Q&A. Is that right, Paige?
That is correct. All right, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat. All right, we have a couple questions to get started. So first, this one seems like a question for you, Alistair. What are your plans for the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, there's a couple of strands to that. The 12 to 18 months, we're basically looking to make the big data platform the default resting place for all information in the organization required for reporting and analytics. So that will mean that we will be plumbing in the platform to our core banking platform, for example, at the same time as deleveraging from the legacy platform and moving the transactional loads off of it and onto the new platform. The other thing, in terms of an incremental or an additional capability, our main activity will be in the analytics space. We will be working with both our colleagues in digital and also our financial crime and compliance program to build out a scale-out architecture that will allow us to do analytics in all our data sets. And we're starting to see, we've already seen great success in that space, in the fraud space. So we'll be looking to make those analytical components available for generic use. So you know, what represents, you know, a sort of entity resolution capability for financial crime can be equally as useful to the digital banking guys in order to understand our client and, you know, bring in weblog information and all the sort of unstructured data sources that Steve discussed at the start of the presentation.
Great. And it looks like we have another question about cloud. So what is Nordea's cloud strategy?
Well, we're just starting in that space. I think along with a lot of financial services, certainly in Europe, I think the US answer is maybe a little bit different, but certainly in Europe, we are looking to move to cloud, I would say within the next 2 years. We are in discussions with all the main vendors. We would see the end state of this platform, for example, almost certainly being cloud-based. But in order to do that, we have to be able to be confident that we are adequately in control of our information. So we can point to personally identifiable information and make sure that either we've protected it such that we can take it to the cloud sufficiently, or that maybe the bank's risk appetite is we're not going to put that kind of data in the cloud. That's not to say it's good or bad. That's just about an individual institution's risk appetite or acceptance of essentially other people's computers, let's be honest here. So over the next 2 years, we will be starting to move towards more of a cloud-based infrastructure across the bank. And we would see that this platform would be a major beneficiary of that. So, you know, maintaining all this infrastructure on premise will not really allow us, I don't believe, to get to our end state of all of the bank's data in one place.
Awesome, thanks. And it looks like we have another question. The question is, by getting data to the end users faster and more interactively, are you seeing more value generated by having subject matter experts drive the process?
Hi, Paige. It's a good question, and the short answer is absolutely. So by providing our tooling to the end user, we really are enabling and freeing up the SME to display their knowledge and experience. Nobody knows the data better than the SME. And by abstracting data teams away from this process, we're just providing the supporting infrastructure. SMEs are doing things more efficiently. We're not making the same data assumptions. It's hard to have an assumption when the data is right in front of you on the screen. We're doing things more quickly because we're getting the data sets from a number of different systems queued up on Trifacta, ready for the SMEs to use. So I have to say, absolutely, we really are seeing a step change in our project velocity.
Great, thanks. And actually, Steve and Shant, if you want to jump in and answer that question as well, just from what you've seen in your experience.
Sure, from a Cloudera perspective, I mean, 18% of our workloads are running in the cloud today, so already a pretty dramatic evolution there. Purely from a sort of cloud deployment as well, I mean, we have a component called Cloudera Director, and we have people deploying across Google and Azure, and Amazon, and even sort of partners like CenturyLink. But what's really interesting for us is just literally 2 weeks ago at Strata, we launched something called Cloudera Altus, which is a fully hosted self-serve model as well. So yeah, it is really interesting to see how many customers are moving that way. Initially, I think they started using it more as a kind of way of proving out the technology, but now more and more production deployments. I actually sat on a panel about 2 months ago with the CTO of Microsoft and the CTO of Amazon, and the customer we're at has a plan to move by 2018 80% of all their deployments into the cloud. So it's moving very quickly.
Yeah, and Shant here too, to the point about enabling SMEs with faster, more direct access to data. This is definitely a huge trend that we've seen that really enables success over the last 5 or 10 years, we've been seeing things like shadow IT and data silos and this constant struggle between the business teams and sort of the back office, especially in financial services, about governance and data access, and each one trying to do whatever it takes, either not responding to IT support tickets or making copies of data in their own places to get their own productivity. But we're finally entering an era where the example Paul gave beautifully illustrates how if you can get an SME in the room together with the technical folks, and instead of always being at odds with each other, they can really work together to get results and solve a problem very quickly. It's a tremendous cost savings, and it's a tremendous realization of the value of the different data sources all the organizations have hidden and tucked away in a bunch of places.
Great, thanks, Sean. And one last final question for Alistair and Paul. Based on the use case that you discussed today and the technologies that you're using, what have you learned that you think other people could benefit from?
Well, the real value for us is the fact that our data is in one place. We don't have to worry about having to buy extra kit. We know we can scale out to fairly substantial volumes, and that follows a sort of linear cost model. Actually, it tails off at the upper end. So the real advantage to us, or the lessons learned, is that when we are selecting our vendors, we need them all to play nicely with each other. The real value of the continuity that Paul showed was that the metadata from Trifacta is actually produced by another tool, by a tool called Waterline. It's inherited by Trifacta, and that metadata is available within the Wrangle script, and then that's played back in through Cloudera Manager, Navigator, and available to Arcadia. So the fact that all these components are having a single conversation under the umbrella of a secured platform, which is what Cloudera provides, integration with all our authentication and identification systems, really is the big lesson for us. If we have to take data out the platform in order to do a job, and classical ETL is a great example of that, we start to lose visibility of the transformations that happen. We give ourselves a data lineage challenge. We also give ourselves a data security challenge. So our biggest lesson learned from what we've done is that the value of the adherence to the APIs within the platform, and really the true value of open source based tools and the collaboration that enables.
Great, thank you. All right, so that does it for our webinar today. If you're interested in learning more about the technologies that you've heard about, we have a few resources listed below, so feel free to check these out. But thanks again for joining, and hope to see you again at one of our other webinars.